Welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. I'm your host, Deborah Chantry-Taylor. I'm a trained entrepreneurial leadership and business coach, a professional EOS implementer, and an established business owner myself. I am really passionate about helping business owners to have a better life through creating a better business. My guests have also experienced the highs and lows of business, and we want to share those learnings with you to help you avoid some of the common mistakes and also be inspired by their success. My hope is that you take something from each of these short episodes that you can put into action to help you get what you want, not only out of your business, but also your life. Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. I'm here with Seth Gleeson today, who's from Datum Projects. Welcome, Seth. Thank you for coming along.
Nice to meet you, Deborah.
Thank you. Now, Seth is a fellow Brit from Kent, I understand, so we're just chatting about our respective backgrounds. And you run Datum Project, which is actually quite a reasonably sized business. Tell me what it is that they do, what you do.
Yeah, it's Datum Projects, which is a little, I suppose, different bit of language. But we are a commercial interiors contractor. Yeah. Predominantly, we do retail interiors, so shop fitting. So we fitted out quite a few stores in Sylvia Park, the Westfield Newmarket development, and Commercial Bay, and in the bottom of the city as well.
Nice. Okay, that was your work, was it?
We did about 12 retail stores in each of those developments, which for one contractors, quite a few.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, I'm guessing that last year was a bit of a tough year then for you with retail closing down with COVID and whatnot. How did it go last year?
Yeah, last year was a toughie for us. Obviously, like any other business, COVID hit us like a sledgehammer.
Yep.
But we were quite fortunate that we came out of lockdown and were straight into the fit out of Commercial Bay. So we managed to keep all our staff on board, and actually we employed a couple more guys straight off the bat. So it hit us financially, and it wasn't a great year for us last year. But we managed to establish ourselves in the marketplace as a leader in what we do.
Yep.
And thanks to that, the workload's looking really good for 2021.
Oh, I'm really pleased to hear that. Thank you. Before we get started, I'd love to hear a bit of a professional and a personal best, so our listeners can get to know a little bit more about Seth behind the business.
Well, I suppose my personal best, something I'm particularly proud of, is last 5 or 6 years I've coached young kids at rugby league up at the Hibiscus Coast Raiders. So I've taken them through from sort of 4 or 5 year olds through to what will be the under 11s this year, and we've got quite a successful team. So proud of that. And I mentioned to you just shortly ago before we came on that I just caught my first yellowfin tuna on my boat. So I'm pretty proud of that too.
So what size was it?
It was 35 kilos.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
And great sashimi. And really good in the pan as well. So
share
that out with friends.
That's brilliant. Okay.
Professionally, I suppose we've had a lot of highlights along the way. I just put some on LinkedIn actually about how we've been in 3 factories, and the start of last year we went into a 2,500 square metre facility, which is fantastic. We fitted it out to suit ourselves, and we've really arrived in the marketplace now. So I think the culture we have in the business is probably what I'm most proud of, though. I think it's taken a few years to build up, but it's exactly where we want it to be.
And when did the company actually start? How long has it been going for now?
It started in 2012. Yep. So it was our 9th birthday on the 1st of February.
Oh, yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so 2012, so it's been over a few years, yes. And you just made sort of or alluded to the fact that it's taken a while to get the right people. Or the right culture, I should say. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, culture is something that, it's something you just got to keep working on. That flywheel effect they talk about, you've got to keep pushing it. And it's about having the right people in the business. Mm-hmm. I think, you've got to try and train people into your culture, but sometimes if they're not the right fit for your culture, then you have to move them on, which is a bit callous, but actually it works in your favour.
And I think it's best for both people, right? There's no point in both the employer and the employee being unhappy.
I think you're right, and I've had it before where people have moved on and they've actually come back and worked for us as an external contractor. And I wouldn't say they thanked me, but there's certainly no malice there. They're enjoying what they're doing now.
Sure, fantastic. Now, we're talking about reducing stress and overwhelm today, and when I chatted to you before you came on the podcast, we were talking about the fact that for you, that's been about having the right people in the right seats. Do you want to explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
I'm going to sound like I just like to sack people all the time, don't I? But,
Not at all.
Yeah, for me, being able to relax as a business owner is about being able to rely on your staff.
Yeah.
It's about having competent people in the right position.
Mm-hmm.
We've been fortunate enough. We've had a GM on board now for the last couple of years. And that's really given me a chance to focus on the sales side of the business, which means that I'm not quite as hands-on as I used to be.
Yeah.
And
are the staff grateful for that?
I don't know. I think half of them sort of miss my input, and half of them probably don't miss my input. So it's certainly freed me up to look at the things that as a business owner you don't always get a chance to, the sales, the culture we've talked about, So going back to your question, I think having people in the right places, competent people who you trust, who you rely on, and I'm proud to say that we've got that in space in our business.
And so, what does that mean for you personally? Then, if you've got the right team around you, what does that mean as a business owner?
Well, to put it into perspective, in 2 weeks' time, I'm away on a fishing trip for a week.
Yeah.
And if you asked me 3 years ago if I was going to do that, I probably may have done, but I probably would have spent more time on the phone looking at my emails than I would have done fishing.
Right. So this time we're actually going after tuna, right?
Yeah, well, actually, marlin and tuna, hopefully this time.
Right,
So it gives me a chance to be able to not have to worry when my back's turned.
Sure.
And I've always had competent people in place, but when you've actually got that senior management team in place, they're looking after your job as well as their own, if you like.
And I think as the business grows up, we have a lot of clients where they start the business and where the business started and where it finished up is often quite different. So therefore the people you take on that journey with you, they do have to change over time if they're not quite the right fit for the new business. Would that be fair to say? Yeah,
I agree, yeah. And even some of the people who are still in the business have to go through a transition with you. And quite often it's quite reluctant. You add in new layers of management into your team. And it can be, for people who've been in touch with the strategy and the decision-making, to all of a sudden have another level of management above them is not always the easiest thing as well. So
challenging. Yeah. So how do you deal with that? What do you do to sort of facilitate that transition?
Very good question. I think I probably dealt with it organically and didn't really plan my way through it. Maybe if I turned back the clock, I may have done it differently. But I think the big thing initially is to really back the management team have come in.
Yep.
Because if you try and circumvent them, then you're really undermining them.
It's a mum and dad thing, right? So you go to mum says no, and you go to dad and say,
very much so.
Question.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if I was mum or dad, but I had to support my partner in that instance. So so that's something that I was quite keen to do. Something I probably didn't do well enough was to make sure I was communicating to those people that they were still a very, very important part of the business, which they were and they still are. So but the transition doesn't take that long, and the business is better off for it.
Yeah. So to go from how many you had yourself just in the beginning back in 2012, or was there a couple of you in the business? What was it looking like in 2012?
2012 it was myself in a small room up in Ottawa.
So it wasn't on your own,
with a computer, and my wife came in and did the accounts for me on Xero. So me for about 6 months. We were quite lucky. There was a shopping centre development, small one that opened up in Silverdale, which just happens to be where I live.
Yep.
We picked up what was called Telecom store then, which is now Spark, obviously.
Yes,
the North Beach store there and a couple of others. And from then just got on a roll and have a look back.
So has it all been plain sailing?
No, I don't think it's been plain sailing, but it's been enjoyable.
Yep.
I've loved nearly every minute of it. I would say every minute of it. There's been some personal challenges, but it's not been plain sailing, but it's been fun, and I think if you go into it with the right attitude, don't have too high expectations, and check yourself. Make sure that you understand, or try and take other people's views on board. then it's a parallel last.
So how do you get to keep people involved in that? Because obviously as the owner, we often have quite a strong vision for the business and where it's headed. And you're obviously a thought leader in your space as well. But how do you make sure your team are kept on board with what you're doing?
You probably gather from this podcast that I'm a talker.
Yes.
So,
good, yeah.
So I like to keep people informed. I like to. We have a quarterly newsletter within our business.
Oh, yeah.
We post out to everybody. Very old-fashioned postal thing.
That works still. People underestimate the power of offline.
Yeah. So I try and firstly thank people for what they do. We get a health and safety message out to them. We have our MVPs where they get a meat pack for being awesome.
Oh, yeah.
We introduce new staff and that, and you try and talk a little bit about the strategy and what we're planning to do.
Yep.
I just try to talk to people on a day-to-day basis, but as the company gets bigger, it's harder to get around the sites. And I walked around our factory this morning for the first time in 2 weeks. It's the only other side of the wall from my office.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's. I probably need to practice what I preach, but it's getting out and talking to people as much as you can.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. What's been the biggest challenge in that time? So we've been going for, what, many years is that? Is that 9 years?
9 years, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Your birthday on the 1st of February. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah. So 9 years. So, yeah, what's been the biggest challenge in that time, do you think?
Probably I had a really good friend who worked for me, and he went his own way, and it was actually quite hard for me to take on board, probably because I sort of felt like I was losing a mate more than losing an employee. And I sort of learned a bit of a lesson from that is that, now everybody who comes on board with the company comes on board for their merits, not because of who they are.
Yep.
He was actually a very competent person, but his life was taking a different road, and it took me a little while to reconcile that, which was more on me than it was him.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge. I took that quite personally.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, challenges, if something ever goes wrong, I still take it personally. I want to. We have some values in our company, and they're all around our delivery and our approachability.
Yep.
And I get quite upset if we fail to achieve, which doesn't happen very often, I have to say, for those listening. But when it does, I take it personally.
And so what do you do? How do you make sure those values are kind of instilled throughout the organisation, and then what do you do? Because sometimes we're human, right? We make errors. We don't mean to, but we do. Yeah. How do you recover from that?
Well, you just keep making sure that people understand what our values are. And I live by the values, and so I set those expectations, and I pull people up on them.
Yeah. What happens to somebody, who, because in an interview they can appear to be the right person, and then they come on board and they actually start working with you, you said a completely different side to them. How do you try and make sure there is a values match from the beginning?
Good question. And to be honest, I wasn't very good at that. I was very much here's a hole, there's a hole-shaped person, I'm going to put that person in the hole, because I just felt like it was the way to fix it. I needed a bum on the seat.
Yes.
And actually got taught probably by our previous financial controller. She would go through quite a rigorous process of interview.
Yep.
And she wouldn't accept people unless she felt they were right.
Yeah.
So it's a case of making sure that I like the person.
Yep.
Because I don't like people who don't have similar values to me. That actually didn't come across that way. You know what I mean?
They have to share the same values.
They don't share the values. They're not really my type of person. I quite often bring my wife into to interviews. She does some HR for the business, so I bring her in, and she'll
second opinion, make sure that actually.
I'm a gut instinct person. She'll just make sure my gut's right.
I'm reading a really great book called Essentialism at the moment, Greg McKeon, I think it's called. Have you read it?
I started to read it, I haven't finished it.
So I'm in a book club, so I'm forced to read it, 5 chapters every week, so it's on the 10th chapter. And it's really interesting because it talks about when people are employing people, it's actually about thinking not only are they the right person for the... It's kind of the question is, can you see yourself working with them? So if you can't see yourself working with them, they're probably not the right fit. Yeah, and that's the way that we sort of tend to look at things and go, right, okay, is this person going to fit in? Can I work with them? Will they work with us?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about reducing stress and overwhelm. You said definitely in the right people. What have been the biggest challenges in the people arena for you? you ever had, apart from your friend who obviously had other ideas, has there been any challenges around people who didn't fit into the organisation or weren't quite right for it?
I won't go into too many specific details.
Not at all. But just sort of high level.
I've exited people very knee-jerk in the past,
right? And
financially it's come back and bitten me.
Welcome to New Zealand laws.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, they're pretty draconian at times. But I don't regret one of them. Those people needed to go at that time. They needed to go.
Yeah.
And I think that actually helped our culture. People understood that, if you're not on the bus, you're not welcome here. Yeah. And once again, I'm probably sounding like I'm a bit of a hardest. I'm not. But I want to protect our culture at all costs. And
I think you have to protect the culture at all costs.
If it costs $5 or $6 grand to exit someone, it's cheaper than having them in the company for another 6 months. So.
Tony Fox, I was on a couple of weeks ago, did exactly the same thing. It's like, has the conversation, are you really happy here? And if they even hesitate, he knows they're not the right person, and then it's time to kind of get them out. And it's not, I say it does work for both the employer and the employee, because they'll go on and find something better as well.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we always ask for 3 tips from our guests around what would they tell what they suggest other people could do within their business that would actually help them. So have you got 3 tips for me?
Yeah, my first one isn't really around stress, but I believe that it's one that people don't understand or realise as much, and that's find the right bank manager and the right bank for you and your business. A lot of people that they start off business with just a retail business bank, and stick with them for a long time. And as your business grows, you need to be with the right tier of business bank for you. Yeah. You need to be happy with the service, and I know that. They're much for much at times, but I think making sure that you exit your business banker if they're not working for you. Right business. It's probably my first one.
And in some ways that is linked to stress, because money is a massive issue in terms of if you haven't got cash flow and you haven't got somebody supportive of the growth of your business, then it does create quite a bit of stress, I should imagine. So get the right person in the bank, somebody who understands what you're doing, somebody who knows what you're trying to achieve and will actually back you, just much like you do with your stuff.
Very much so, yeah. And that is, someone who's on the same page as you, and will go to their superiors in the bank with the right story and fight your battles for you. And you can tell.
Number 2, what would number 2 be?
Number 2, a really good friend of mine said to me once the saying, which is the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. And that really resonates with me. It's don't suffer fools. Yep. Don't avoid conflict. If you see something wrong, don't just think, I'll deal with that next time because I just can't be bothered with it. You really need to front foot it and sometimes, like you say, actually it's appreciated. Yeah. People then know exactly where your standards are, what you expect of them.
I talk about boundaries. I always give the example of, imagine a little seedling in the middle of a paddock full of cows. What happens to that seedling?
Yes.
It gets trampled, it gets eaten. Yes. You put a boundary around it being a fence, it allows that seedling to grow and flourish and thrive, and then next thing it's a big tree. It doesn't need it anymore. But if you don't put the boundaries around, it never gets there.
Well, so it's like kids, isn't it? If you don't set those boundaries, then they're not going to grow up to be what you would like them to be.
And I actually think being a business owner is much like being a good parent. You need a simple set of rules. You need to follow those rules, and you need to keep repeating them over and over again and make sure you stick to them. Okay, last one for the listeners.
Yeah, we alluded to it in I suppose the subject here, but it is to be able to switch off after work. Yeah. So, I'm quite lucky. I've got a loving wife and 3 kids who keep me busy. I like to go fishing with my friend. I like a beer or 2 every now and then. And I think I've seen people before who they don't put work down. They don't. They see it as their own entity. For me, even though it's my business, it is still a job. And I've got other jobs. I've got to be a parent.
You've got other passions outside of work. Yeah,
exactly that. And I think it gives you a chance to refresh and to get back into it on a Monday morning whenever you want to, and really hit it with a fresh set of eyes again.
Yeah, so I think you're right. If you're completely engrossed in it all the time, that clarity of thought that you get from just taking a step away from it.
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So finally, if people would like to talk to you more about what you do and how can they get in contact with you? Where do they find you?
Well, Datum Projects, we've got our own website, datumprojects.co.nz. To say we manufacture commercial joinery, we fit out office spaces, fit out retail stores, and general construction as well. But if they need to get hold of me personally, it's Seth at datumprojects.co.nz.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, look, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Good luck with the rest of the year.
That's fantastic. Been a pleasure. Thanks.
Bye. Thanks again for joining us on Better Business, Better Life with me, your host, Deborah Chantry-Taylor. If you enjoyed what you heard, then please subscribe to this podcast and let us help you to get what you want out of business and life. Each week we will release a new 20-minute episode which will give you 3 takeouts to put into action immediately on one of the 6 key areas that can take your business from good to great. These short podcasts are designed to be listened to in their entirety on the way to or from work or in your lunch break. The podcast is supported by free resources, templates and useful tools which you can find at deborahchantrytaylor.com.
This podcast was proudly produced by NZ Audio Editors. For all your editing services, you can find us on the World Wide Web at www.nzaudioeditors.com.